Drama in Egypt, but tonight, who is in charge? They thought they were finally going to get their way. That was the signal the army was sending. But then Egyptian people and the world heard this.
To carry on doing my responsibility to protect the Constitution, the interests of the people, until a transfer of power and responsibility is handed to whoever is elected by the electorate next September.
The bottom line is President Mubarak is staying. So what happens now? Mark Urban is here.
As this standoff goes on, the rhetoric is becoming more confrontational. Tonight, Egypt's rulers have blamed foreign countries and their journalists for stirring up the trouble.
We'll be live in Cairo hearing from protesters about their next move, and we'll be asking how the international community will respond to tonight's historic events. Good evening. It was an extraordinary build-up. On the 17th day of protest, the army addressed the protesters, saying their legitimate demands would be met in full. Then came the news that Hosni Mubarak would speak on state television this evening. But when he appeared, he pulled the rug from under their feet and said he would not bow to international pressure or the demands of his own people to resign, but that he would hand some power to his vice president and relinquish all power in September. The Army Supreme Command is meeting and may make a statement tonight. In a moment, we'll be hearing from our diplomatic editor, Mark Urban. But first, Lise Doucette is in Cairo. Lise, from where you are, what reaction are you getting from the protesters?
Anger, fury, despair. As we speak, crowds are moving out of Tahrir Square, which has been the focal point of protest. They have now moved to surround the state television building, which isn't that far away from the square. And as President Mubarak finished his speech a few hours ago, thousands also started moving, saying that they were heading towards the presidential palace. Now, that's about 15 to 20 kilometers from the square, Heliopolis. So you can imagine the kind of conviction, determination of the people in the square. When the day began, they had vowed to do that on Friday. The mood shifted to one of palpable anticipation when we had, for the very first time, senior members of President Mubarak's party saying they expected him to stand aside, to hand over powers. The square, if I can call it that, then believed they were within victory, and then it all came crashing down.
But as the protesters are on the move, what's the position of the army and the tanks? That is the question of the hour. We've heard from the Vice President Omar Suleiman. He has told the protesters to go home. He has said that they will not tolerate this kind of activity. We heard from the army earlier tonight saying that all the demands of the protesters would be met, but they were here to ensure security. As one leading scholar here said, in these next few hours, the army will have to choose between the president and Egypt. Lise, thank you very much. Well, our diplomatic editor, Mark Urban, has been watching events in Cairo. Here's his report.
The routine is familiar enough by now in Tahrir Square, and this morning's arrivals may have hoped for a decisive change, but they had no real reason to expect it. The army monitored those going in, as they have for days, little knowing that this was the day their commanders would make their move. Around the country, meanwhile, demonstrations continued, with factory and transport workers reportedly joining the move to oust their president. Back in Cairo, teams of doctors and nurses had arrived to show their solidarity with the protest, giving their president a dose of their own rhetorical medicine. It was only late in the afternoon that it became apparent that something of great importance was happening. The army officer told the crowd that the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces was meeting to discuss the protesters' demands. Not long after that, the military issued what it called Communiqué Number 1.
In support of the legitimate demands of the people, today, Thursday the 10th of February 2011, the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces held a meeting to discuss the latest developments. It decided to continue holding meetings on a continuous basis to discuss what actions and measures could be taken to safeguard the country and the achievements and aspirations of the great people of Egypt.
As word spread of the military communique, people were bewildered by its meaning. Was it a military coup against Mubarak, or a military seizure of power on his behalf?
We have many questions. What will the military regime be like exactly? We don't know what will be allowed and what will be permitted. We'll have to wait and see.
As day turned to night, febrile rumour ran through the streets. Mubarak had already fled. The army were forcing him out. These rumours were fanned by the fact that the head of his own party seemed to write the president off.
I would like that he speaks to the nation. That's the time where the president should speak to his people.
And what do you expect him to tell the people?
To tell the people that he has fulfilled his promise that the order for constitutional amendment is out to the parliament, and that he respects the requests of the young people in the streets, and he is doing the right steps to keep the country intact by passing his authority to his vice president and asking him to continue the commitment to the people for peaceful transmission of power to a next president elected freely under new constitution.
This evening, Mr. Mubarak met his vice president, General Suleiman. Was it to hand over power? Rumour redoubled as it became clear that the president would address the nation tonight. In the United States, meanwhile, the administration seemed to be preparing itself for the same imminent departure.
We are witnessing history unfold. It's a moment of transformation that's taking place because the people of Egypt are calling for change. And they've turned out in extraordinary numbers, representing all ages and all walks of life. But it's young people who've been at the forefront. A new generation, your generation, who want their voices to be heard. And so going forward, we want those young people and we want all Egyptians to know America will continue to do everything that we can to support an orderly and genuine transition to democracy in Egypt.
By the time the Egyptian leader spoke just before 11 in Cairo, anticipation was soaring. But it was not to be gratified. Mubarak reiterated his intention to stay until September's elections.
I give my pledge and commitment to carry out my responsibilities to protect the Constitution and the interests of the people until responsibility is handed to whoever is elected by the electorate next September in free and fair elections, guaranteed by transparency and freedom.
In among the talk of changing 6 clauses of the Constitution, there was a suggestion that powers could be transferred to General Suleiman. But along with that came an attempt to rally his people with nationalism, criticism of those foreigners who were trying to force the pace of change in Egypt.
The main embarrassment and what is wrong, and the thing that I will not accept ever, is to listen to diktats from abroad, wherever they are coming from, and for whatever reason, pretexts or excuses.
One of those foreigners returned the compliment with this salvo.
We're studying very closely what the President and the Vice President of Egypt have said. It is not immediately clear what powers are being handed over and what the full implications are. We think the solution to this has to be owned by the Egyptian people themselves. All we want in the United Kingdom is for them to be able to settle their own differences in a peaceful and democratic way.
In Cairo, the chants against the president broke out again soon after the broadcast ended, but the day's expectations were dashed for those who'd wanted a swift end to the whole business.
And Mark joins me in the studio just now. Mark, I suppose one of the key questions is how the army will play this.
Well, of course, in this situation, it's anybody's guess in a way. I mean, I think the striking thing about today's events is the sign that the institutions of Egyptian power may be fragmenting. The army apparently saying that it was taking over control earlier in the day. The president, whatever he may or may not have held out as hopes to his vice president or the army itself, then deciding to try and tough it out in the broadcast. This curious hint that he thought of transferring powers to General Suleiman, and all of us sitting there thinking, and did you in it? But the thought was not completed. And I think if one looks at the power relationships now between this embattled president, clearly on his way out, whichever way you look at it, General Suleiman trying to take over, a representative of the intelligence service, therefore in many ways not liked by the army. Rumours today that they'd tried to assassinate him in Cairo, which we see no real evidence of, but rumours nevertheless. And the army and the protesters, all different institutions now beginning, it seems, to try and write their own script.
But what calculation is Mubarak making? Because, of course, what the protester was saying was the tone of his speech was so patronising, and that he was the only man actually who could sort out what was happening, despite the fact that obviously hundreds of thousands of people disagree.
I think it was patronising in the sense that he referred to, he almost said, I feel your pain, in the sense of the loss of the youth, as he called it, and the martyrs' families and the families of the wounded. He tried to empathise with the very people who were shaking the foundations of his state. So I think that's true. It will, in that sense, have been a shocking speech to many of the protesters. But I think now, clearly, all eyes will be on the security organisations. Do the protesters try and physically force the pace of change, either at the presidential palace, the TV station tonight, and how do those with guns respond if they do? Well,
we'll be speaking to you later in the programme, but joining me here in the studio is the author James Zogby. But from Cairo first, we have Gigi Ibrahim, who is one of the activists and organisers the protests, and Adaf Sweif, the internationally acclaimed author, both of whom have been immersed in the protests in the square during the last 17 days. Gigi Ibrahim, first of all, your reaction to hearing that speech by President Mubarak tonight?
All I can say is that it said nothing new, really. The people have been on the streets for days and days and chanting the people want the removal of the regime, and against also Omar Suleiman himself. So really Omar Suleiman is as illegitimate as Mubarak, and has been and will continue be. So the protests, I think, will continue. It just angered people that their message is still not across, despite all the millions of people that took to the street and the hundreds of people that died in this cause, and it makes people more determined than ever.
But of course, earlier in the day, these joyous scenes of protesters, almost enjoy too soon, because obviously in the end their hopes were dashed. Now we have the opposition leader al-Baradei saying Egypt will explode. The army must save the day. I mean, what will happen tomorrow? Are there going to be more strikes? Will there be more people on the streets?
Yes, tomorrow it's on. People will still take to the streets. They will continue the protests. More strikes are happening every day, and I think people are fed up with these promises and having their demands not met. These are not the demands of the people, and any concessions are simply meaningless, other than the resignation of Mubarak, who is the main symbol of this regime, and a democratic process needs to be installed in place.
But just very quickly, as Mark Urban was saying, and as Lise Doucette was saying in Cairo, I mean, what is your judgment on what the army will do?
The army is maybe now taking, I think, the people's side, because the first announcement that they said didn't include Mubarak, which was hinting to somehow, or projecting that the army maybe will be on the people's side. So it'll be interesting to see how the army will go on with these announcements and take take a stand.
Adaf Sweif, you're of a generation that has lived with all of the Egyptian oppression. Your reaction to what has happened today, were you surprised, or in the end was your wise head thinking that this might happen?
No, I was surprised actually, because of course what we've had in Egypt over the last 2 weeks is unprecedented. It is remarkable. And I think it's remarkable on the world stage, not just in Egypt, to have a revolution that is so people-oriented, so grassroots, so inclusive, democratic.